The issue of money is one of the most interesting subjects for these young people, because when I talk about the monetizing of debt, the printing of money, the endless devaluation of our currency and how important it is, it gets one of the loudest applauses because young people understand that money is a very important issue. They understand that the Constitution is explicit.
Last week on ConservativeNetworkBroadcasting.com, Dr. Bill Green wrote an opinion piece on ending the Federal Reserve, which drew a lot of readers asking for more information. So joining me today is Right March founder Bill Green to discuss this and a possible Ron Paul presidential bid. I'm Julianne Thompson. Welcome to America Rising. Ending the Federal Reserve, the Constitutional Tender Act, and a possible Ron Paul presidential bid. Those are today's topics, and I'm joined by Dr. Bill Green, the founder of RightMarch.com, and an active member of the Campaign for Liberty. Bill, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Julianne.
Well, this week, Paul Bernanke got a not-so-welcome Christmas present, as Congressman Ron Paul was appointed chairman of the Domestic Monetary Policy Subcommittee of the House Financial Services Committee. In simple terms, he will oversee the Fed. So, Bill, what do you make of this? You have to be happy.
I'm very happy. I was a little concerned it wasn't going to happen, actually. There were some undercurrents coming out of D.C. from a number of different sources that Boehner was thinking of not giving that chair position to Dr. Paul, even though he was the ranking member while the Democrats were in control. But it turns out that he did. I think he got a lot of feedback from a lot of people around the country concerning that issue. So Dr. Paul got that, and yes, you're right, that's a subcommittee that, well, up until this point, it's not been a very, you haven't heard from that subcommittee much. They've sort of been in charge of whether to continue minting the penny and doing some commemorative coins and things like that. But Dr. Paul has some big plans for it, and indeed he's looking forward to, I think, issuing subpoenas to a lot of people to come in.
I have no doubt you're going to be hearing from the committee now.
I think so. I think they'll actually make C-SPAN now.
Well, you made quite a stir with your article on ending the Fed. People said it was the first time they actually understood the argument, and you gained a lot of supporters as a result. So can you explain to our viewing audience your take on the Federal Reserve?
Sure. One of the good things I think about the Tea Party since being involved in the movement from early on has been, and it's been very exciting, to see people that have actually stepped forward and said, I want to know what the Constitution actually says. I've not been taught it well in the government schools. I want to know what it actually does say. And people are studying it. People are reading it, some for the first time. And they're finding out a lot of things that they didn't know before. Some of the biggest stuff being that there's a lot of things that the federal government does that it's not been given the power to do in the U.S. Constitution. And one of those things is, of course, the Constitution gives Congress in Article 1, Section 8, the power to coin money and to regulate the value thereof. It does not give Congress the power to give that power to anybody else, especially give it away to basically a private banking cartel, which is what we have in the Federal Reserve System. The Federal Reserve is only just under 100 years old. It was put in place by the banking leaders of the day with the help of some senators in the U.S. Senate in 1913. It was passed in the dead of night right before Christmas. Where have we seen that happen before? I think recently with the health care bill, in fact. They seem to have a habit with that. And ever since then, the value of the dollar, since the Federal Reserve has been put in charge of it, has gone down over 95%. What you could buy with 5 cents now, or then, it takes $1 to buy now. So I think one of the things that people are finding out is that that is actually an unconstitutional group that has unconstitutional power. It's not part of the federal government itself, even though the chairman is appointed by the president. It is completely independent, and in fact, it's run by the banks themselves. They have their best interests at heart and not necessarily the best interests of the United States. So that's, I think that's one of the reasons that I and so many people in the Tea Party, and of course Ron Paul, are so adamant about ending the Fed.
Well, there's an upcoming bill, HB3, the Constitutional Tender Act, that you're in support of. Can you tell us a little bit about that legislation? Because it's quite confusing and very controversial even among Tea Party activists.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think one of the reasons that it's a little confusing and maybe even a little controversial is because it really does take the Constitution very seriously. And it makes it a little bit hard for people to get their head around this idea of gold and silver as money instead of just as commodities, which is what we've been sort of gotten used to. The Constitution is very clear. We talked about Article 1, Section 8, saying what the enumerated powers are of the federal government, including to coin money. Article 1, Section 10 says some specific things that the states cannot do. One of those things is to coin money. States can't coin money, only the federal government can do that. They also can't emit bills of credit. That means they can't print their own currency. But one of the specific things it says, and this is where the Constitutional Tender Act comes in, is no state may make anything but gold or silver coin a tender in payment of debt. And what that means is no state at all can make anything, including pieces of paper with dead presidents' pictures on them, can make anything a tender, an offer in payment of any debt, either to the state or from the state. Can't make any payment, any offer of payment to or from the state except using gold or silver. Now that's specific in the Constitution. It's never been amended. It's never been taken out. It still says that no state may make anything but gold or silver coin a tender in payment of debt. Now what the Constitutional Tender Act does is, first of all, bring the state back into compliance with Article 1, Section 10. And it forbids the state from using anything like Federal Reserve notes. It only can use gold or silver coin. Legal tender gold and silver coin. A lot of people don't realize that the U.S. Mint actually mints gold and silver coins. And in fact, Ron Paul was instrumental in helping to bring back the minting of gold and silver coins a few decades ago. And so under the law, it has to mint enough gold and silver coins to meet demand. And what the Constitutional Tender Act does is it says, okay, we're going to use legal tender gold and silver coins, and that's what the state has to use. What it does in the long run is it actually brings value back to people's money. They're suddenly using real money again instead of paper that has been devalued by over 95%. And I think what we're seeing now is because the dollar is being devalued even more, it's being inflated, which means that you're going to see prices rise dramatically very soon now. People are starting to think, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why is this Federal Reserve in charge of our money when the Constitution says they're not supposed to be? And why are we letting them devalue the dollar like we are? What can we do to stop it? That's what this Constitutional Tender Act can do. It can bring back value to the money that we use. Specifically, it brings it back to state transactions, but then it allows people to use it in their everyday transactions as well.
And who are the main sponsors of the bill?
Right now, there's, here in Georgia, the bill has been, it was introduced in the last session by Representative Bobby Franklin and co-sponsored by Representative Barry Loudermilk. It got a big hearing before some joint subcommittees of the Banks and Banking Committee, and we've got some great footage of the testimony at those hearings at our website, constitutionaltender.com. It's been reintroduced now for this new session coming up. Bobby Franklin has reintroduced it in the House. Barry Loudermilk has now been elected to the state Senate, so our hope is that he's going to now carry it in the state Senate. What's happening is we're getting contacts from a lot of other state representatives and some state senators that have been elected now to these offices that are strict constitutionalists. And the Tea Party has helped bring these people into office, and they want to sign on with this too. They want to help with this too. And now I'm getting calls from Tea Parties all around the state. And in fact, I'm getting calls from around the nation because over half a dozen other states are now introducing versions of the Constitutional Tender Act into their state legislatures as well. So we're really excited about it. This is really the right time for this to happen because people are waking up, they're seeing what the Constitution says, and they're wanting to return to that because they recognize that the founders knew what they were talking about.
So this is not a federal bill, it's a state bill here in Georgia, and it's something that's gaining traction in several states around the nation. Tell our viewers, if this passes, what happens to their paper money?
Nothing really happens to it. the paper money it certainly doesn't devalue the paper money. The paper money is devaluing on its own. The Federal Reserve is taking care of that. What it does is it introduces competition in currency. Right now, Federal Reserve notes, those dollars that you have in your wallet, say on there, if you'll notice, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. And that is absolutely true. It will still be legal tender for all debts, public and private, except in relation to the state, because the Constitution forbids that. And so what you're first going to see happen is you're going to see businesses who have to pay taxes to the state. They have to pay their the sales taxes they collect and so forth. They're going to want to have gold and silver coins. What that means is they're going to start pricing their items in both Federal Reserve notes and gold and silver coins, because they're still going to need Federal Reserve notes. Everyone still is going to need that to begin with. So then people are going to say, oh, well, I'm noticing that the price in Federal Reserve notes in dollars keeps going up, but the price in gold or silver is staying constant. Well, that's what gold and silver does. It retains its value. It has for thousands of years. And so what you'll see then is people starting to say, well, I want to be able to buy it at a price that is going to maintain and not have to spend more and more of my money. Well, this act says that the banks have to allow citizens to open accounts using gold and silver legal tender coins. And so people can start doing that. They don't have to carry gold and silver around. They write checks off of it. They use their debit card off of it. And they say, you know, this thing is going to cost 1 ounce of silver. So I'm going to write a check for 1 ounce of silver. That gets transferred from their account into the business account, just like you would have with dollars. It works the same way, really. But you're seeing now money retain its value. People are opening gold and silver accounts. They have to, because they have to pay taxes in it. The state has to convert all of its contracts over, all of its tax bills that go out have to be in gold and silver denominations. And so what it does is it introduces that competition. People will still have, they're not going to suddenly lose their money that's in their bank accounts. In fact, they're finally going to get the opportunity to convert their money into real money, gold and silver, and keep it in the bank.
Right, and I'm sure it's going to be an argument and a debate that goes on for some time, because there are people that are not going to give in to this lightly.
No, probably not.
And most people still truly do not understand this, and you're going to be writing another piece on Conservative Network Broadcasting explaining this more in detail, and we'll have you on again in the future. But let me get to our next subject. We know that you've been a big supporter of Congressman Ron Paul for years. You've been active in the Campaign for Liberty. He ran unsuccessfully for president before, but he's gaining some momentum, and as we stated, was just appointed to head up the committee that oversees the Federal Reserve. Is 2012 the year for Ron Paul?
You know, it might be. He's not saying. He gets asked every time he has an interview with anybody. He was on Hannity just a week or two ago and was asked again. And his response is pretty consistent. I haven't made up my mind. I haven't decided. And so I think everyone's sort of waiting and seeing. I hope he does, because I think, again, the election 2 years ago, I think, was a fantastic groundwork laying opportunity for Dr. Paul. I've supported Dr. Paul since back in the late 80s, and I've seen how consistent he's been in his beliefs, in his strong fiscal conservatism that he has pushed for so many years, when we've seen so many people that call themselves conservatives fall by the wayside and become liberals and statists and say, hey, we ought to have big government. And Dr. Paul has been consistent. No, we need small government, and we need restrained monetary policies, and we need to obey the Constitution. He's a strict constitutionalist. So I think 2012 could be the year for him because he got such a boost from the 2008 campaign that now you see him everywhere. I mean, he's constantly being interviewed, and now he's being interviewed and people are saying, gee, Dr. Paul, you were right. I guess maybe we should listen to you after all, and which I kind of like seeing that, but I would like to see it taken to a national stage. We'll have to see what he says about it, but if his support base has anything to do with it, he'll be drafted.
Well, 2012 was certainly going to be an interesting year. We have to keep our feet to the fire. We have to keep moving forward, and we've got to take back the White House for conservatives in 2012. Bill Green, thank you for joining me today. We hope you'll come back very soon.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Remember, you are the heart and soul of the Tea Party movement. I'm Julianne Thompson. Thank you for joining us today on America Rising.